Hello and welcome to Got Clutter, Get Organized, the conversation. I am excited because, as those of you who follow me, the episode before this, we really talked about some of the different new inventions in home organizing, all the new technologies. And today, because I talked about smart labels, but today I get to talk to David Hewlett, who actually introduced me to smart labels. So I am so excited to have this conversation because, as I shared with David, see, I've got my labels right here. Every time I look at them, I just fall in love. So, David, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks so much, Shannon. I'm excited to be here with you.
So, before we get started and really talking more about smart labels, how did you discover smart labels?
Well, I wish I could take ownership of the idea, but unfortunately, somebody else did that. I ended up purchasing this company from an engineer who created this and got bored of it after about a year, and or maybe he didn't want to deal with the logistics of printing out a whole bunch of things. He kind of wanted to focus on the code, and I was more than excited to come in and take it over. I I mean, the idea itself, you may have told your users about it already, or your listeners about it already, but essentially, you take a QR code label from our packs, you put it on a tote or whatever kind of container you want. And yeah, there you go. And you scan it with the app, and it creates a digital container where you can you catalog everything that you're putting into the container. And then down the road, when you're looking for that thing, 6 months later, and you forgot where you put it, you just search in the app, and it says, "Hey, you put it here. It's in this bin that looks this way with this, purple label on it that has this 4-digit code." I don't know how many times I could have used this before I purchased this company. I remember shortly before I purchased the company, I was looking for a Wi-Fi router because we had just moved into our home, and I spent 45 minutes unsuccessfully coming to find this thing. And eventually I found it down the road. I was like, man, if I had just known where that was. So it's a problem that I had experienced personally many times. And I'm also not the best labeler of boxes when moving. Office odds and ends isn't necessarily the best thing to call a box. um, and so, I saw the value in it. I saw how much customers were enjoying it. And so it was a very exciting company for me to purchase and to take on. I was looking at a lot of different companies at the time, and this one really stood out.
Well, I am happy, David. I'm happy you purchased a company. I'm happy you introduced it to me because, like you said, when you're in the midst of moving, really sometimes all you're thinking about, depending on situations, you're thinking about the new place, how you're going to set it up. And then, of course, it's sometimes, I know for some people, it gets down to those last days. You're tired, you're exhausted, and sometimes you are just throwing things in the box because it's an empty box. You got a little bit here, a little bit there, just throw it in there. But like you said, these labels make it so much easier. So, as you were purchasing the company and really doing the research, did you discover like just some things that people were just doing maybe in regards to whether it's moving or storing that you were like, you know what? I need to get this company because it will really solve so many problems.
Yeah, I mean, definitely for sure. The first problem is the one that I described, right? Which is people like me without, where their future self is yelling at them for labeling a box office odds and ends, and you're like, that could be so many things, right? And not only is it labeled office odds and ends, I don't know where that office odds and ends box is, right? So the amateur labeler, me, it is a way to, it's we need a better way to label things so that we know how to find the things that we are looking for.
Mm-hmm.
But even if you're a good labeler, right? I mean, some people go to the extent of, taping a big piece of paper on their bin or box, and it's got a list of everything in it, right? But you still may not know where that box is. And, paper can get wet or fade, all sorts of things. And so for what I call the semi-pro labeler, who's doing that, right, you're missing on the where did I put it, and can I still read what's inside?
Mhm.
And so with smart labels or digital solutions, that you essentially are solving those two problems and making it just so easy for you to find it. And I didn't quite realize it until we had organized our own garage with smart labels, that it's more than just the labeling and having the containers and the stuff in there. It is a freeing up of headspace. Um, so that, I mean, if you think about all the stuff that you've stored that's up here, where you're like, I
Mhm.
have to remember that I stored that there and that I stored that, and
Mhm.
what is in here,
Mhm.
to be able to offload that out of your head and onto a digital platform that will kind of remember for you, means that you have all this space to remember things that are much more important in life,
Yeah.
and to work with. And so what I've found is like the actual true benefit, outside of being, saving time to find your stuff, is that extra space and comfort that comes along with having your stuff organized. And I'm sure you've had many customers who you've worked with who feel that comfort, not
Mhm.
just in the way their space looks, but in the way that they know where everything is.
And you know what? As you were talking, David, it took me a flashback to one of my moves because, like a lot of us, we've had many moves where I worked with a moving company, which was wonderful. They gave me a sheet, okay, and they told me to label the boxes one to whatever, which is good in theory. But then, okay, so I've got box something, label 25 bedroom, but what actually is in the box? And like you said, where is the box? Because I've gotten so now that when I do move, I kind of like, okay, can you at least put all of my kitchen boxes near the kitchen, bedroom near the bedroom? So at least I kind of know, okay, it's at least in one of these, maybe 10 boxes. So you're right. And it just kind of clears up that headspace because once you do move, or even when you're just storing things, it's like that peace of mind and knowing, like, okay, I can go to the app, I can put in what I'm looking for. I can be like in a kitchen on a chair, just relaxing outside. Okay, it's in that box. And then you just kind of go to it directly. So it
Hmm.
does. It saves you time, energy, frustration, anxiety. I could go down the list, David. And this is and it's like almost like part of like your mental health and wellness too,
It
because
is.
it's like just like stress free here. So
Yeah.
you already talked about, how you use it, but are there any other examples in regards to some of your clients or other people who have used labels?
Sure. Well, I mean, in terms of the app specifically, a few just like tips, and you probably talk about these things on your show too, or um, one of the things, especially, and I thought about it, we hired a professional organizer to help us with our garage, because it was daunting, and I knew that they would have better ideas for us, and they would get us to do it too. But one of the things we started with was architecting our plan. So you saw the labels. They're color coded. We have a total of 12 different colors. And so what we did ahead of starting the organization is we started categorizing what are the colors going to represent, right? I mean, because you can categorize by room, you can categorize by theme, you can categorize by whatever you want, right? So, we were doing our garage, right? So we had sporting equipment, which includes like camping and soccer stuff for the kids. We have toys. We had decorations for holidays, and each one of those got a different color. And we started out by writing all that down, and then that made it easier to kind of put everything and know where everything went.
Mhm.
In terms of the app, again, using a lot of text is good, because everything you write in our app is searchable. So when you go back to look for that thing, you might not remember how you put it in. So the more text you put in, the easier it's going to be to find. Um, and then on that point too, for anybody who's not a great speller, I recommend there on both Android and iPhone devices, there is a voice to text button on your keyboard and so if you tap that and just read in what it is, right? So instead of trying to be like, this is a xylophone, and, and you're like, wait, how is xylophone spent? And then like when you go back to search for it, you misspell xylophone, and you're like, why can't I find my xylophone? Well, the voice to text spells it for you, and although it doesn't always get what you're saying right, and you get some funny things in there, it still tends to be a much faster way to enter stuff in. So it helps with
Mhm.
speed too. But I think your question was more about like, what are some ways that people are using this? So the most obvious is garages are great for this, right? Or basements, or self-storage units are really good. I mean, so you don't have to go to the self-storage unit and look at that label that you got on it, right? You can just look and be like, oh, that's my storage unit, or no,
Mhm.
that's not my storage unit, so I don't have to drive there, only to realize that it was actually back in my house. Um, we also have a lot of micro businesses who use our software. I mean, at the core of what it is an inventory management system. But it is not a full blown business inventory management system. It's not going to API with your point of sale system and all that stuff, right? But like we have some features like inventory count, so that you can do a plus and minus on as you pull things out. And so, like eBay sellers, mom and pop shops who have one location, who maybe use an Excel for their inventory, this is a much better way to do it for them, and it's super cheap comparatively to other inventory management systems. And it's really easy to use because we've designed it for consumers, not for businesses. So the process of like getting started is like made for somebody who's like, I don't know technology, and I got these stickers and they seem like they're a great idea. So it just kind of walks you through everything very easily. Anyway, so that's another use.
Mm.
So the person who did our house, professional organizer, has used it for estate cataloging, and for elderly individuals who want to pass things on to their kids, who know that their kids use technology, but they don't really. And they want their kids to know, like, who do I want this thing to go to? Right now, that is not a legal document, of course, saying like, hey, you get this doll, right? The kids can fight over it later, after that person passes, but it at least can be a way for the kids to know, like, here's what they wanted. And it's very clear in the app, which it's that's a thing that's like gives me a lot of happiness. My parents are still around. I'm very fortunate, but we talk openly about like, hey, what's going to go where, and so that's something that is used. And I would say the strangest thing that my app has been used for, is snake feeding. Uh,
Oh,
okay, right. So it's funny.
okay.
So we have this expiration date feature in our app,
Mhm.
which is great for, I actually used it for our spice drawer, so that we'll know when to replace spices. But
Mm.
this person, and it was actually the original idea for the expiration date. They came to me and they said, "Hey, I am a snake breeder, and I have all these different kinds of snakes. They're in, all these cases or whatever, and they need to be fed at different times. And we don't have a good system for knowing, like, oh, they need to be fed on this day, and they need to be fed this animal or bug or whatever it might be, right? Um, and so that was like the impetus for the expiration date feature, which was like, I wasn't going to design a snake feeding feature, but because that's a very niche audience. But expiration dates, and so what they were able to do is be able to say like, okay, this snake gets a mouse on this date,
Mhm.
and then they have custom reminders that are like, you're going to need a mouse to feed this snake in 1 week, and then the day before, and then the day of, so that they have these reminders and they're able to feed their snakes. Strangest use of smart labels I have ever
Wow.
come across.
Wow.
But hey, I was excited. I always loved hearing what customers are doing with it, because they come up with the craziest ideas on how to use the labels to meet their needs. So
Wow.
very fun.
That is interesting, David. And as you were talking, I was thinking because, a lot of my, people who listen, but also, my clients, they live in small spaces. And I'm even thinking about myself because, I've got the holiday decorations.
Hmm.
But then I also have some things of my mother who passed away who I'm just not ready to get rid of. And then just some, archival stuff for me of all the years that I've been in business. And I'm like, this will be perfect because then when it comes time for the holiday season, if I'm thinking, well, what do I really have? Do I need to replace something? I don't have to like dig in the box in the container. I can just go to the label and like, okay, I have those. Oh, maybe I need to get a few more red of these or this, that, and the other. And then
Hmm.
even sometimes, with even my stuff, my all of the years of business archival stuff, I can actually just like, okay, what do you need? Because sometimes people are like, well, I need this. So I'm just thinking it's like possibilities are endless. And then when you start talking about estate planning, I mean,
Hmm.
that is wonderful because I know sometimes people have so much stuff and it's like, well, it's over there and it's in that container, but what's in the container? Because sometimes people need to know exactly what's in the container. And like you said, it's not a legal document, it's just showing what location is. So,
Yeah.
wow. Wow, David. Wow. That's interesting. The whole snake thing was just interesting.
I know, right? That's one of those weird ones. It's just like a fun, like, oh, what? People. I mean, I had another person who used it for parking. They had a parking garage. They
Okay.
owned a parking garage,
Okay.
and they used the QR codes for the cars so that they could scan them and figure out like how much time they had left, or how many days they had
Interesting.
left, and were they on the plan and all that stuff. And that was the way they used it. And I'm like, hey, you be
Interesting.
you, you know.
Wow, that is so, so interesting. Well, David, one of the questions I ask all of my guests is really how do you stay organized? Whether it's, just managing things because you're running businesses, you got family, of course you got all those wonderful things in the garage. So I'm sure you having all kind of activities and just keeping active. So how do you really like stay organized?
Well, um, I should say that before I bought this business, I started out as what I call a disorganized, organized person.
Okay.
Right. So I have my memory. I can remember all sorts of things, and so I know where everything is, but it doesn't look very organized. It's like an organizer's nightmare. But I actually can find everything. Like if you're like, can you find this? I will go locate it, and I know where it is, and it might take me a little longer, but I can get there. Um, but since I bought this business and we have done the garage, and I've seen the benefit of being organized, especially in this digital way. Um, yeah, it has kind of started to change the way I think about it. I also I don't know if you know, there's a podcast host named Ezra Klein.
Mm-hmm.
He is on the New York Times, and he has an episode called "This episode will change the way you think about thinking," and it was another part about this like mind space thing, right? Which the person he was interviewing was saying, these chess masters, right, who can think of all of the different moves that you might be able to do. You might think that they're so smart and their brain is so great, but what they're really doing is filling their brain with all of the moves and not making space for anything else, right? And so I realized that I was doing that to myself by my disorganized organization of being like, I know where everything is, and I have this brain that can do it. And by getting that stuff out of my brain, I've cleared up so much room for other things, to focus on my business, to focus on my kids, to focus on all these other things. And so I am going through a transformation of organization in my life. And I am loving every second of being more organized, and having the digital offload for myself. So I don't know if that completely answered your question, but it that's kind of the way that I've been thinking about it. Are you a member of NAPO by any chance? The
I am
National
not
Association
I
of
was a member years ago, but I am no
was a
longer a
member.
member. Mhm.
I'm a business partner with the San Francisco Bay Area chapter. Yep, yep. And I went to their chapter meeting last night, which is the first one they've done in
Mhm.
person
Mhm.
since the pandemic. And it was like all these people showed up, and they gave a presentation on holistic organization.
Mm.
And it was really neat because it kind of starts with emotional organization,
Mhm.
your own emotional organization, and they were doing it from a client perspective. So they're saying, getting your emotions organized and your clients' emotions organized will help them be productive, and it'll help be organized. It's kind of this like, waterfall effect. And
Mhm,
so that was just last night, so I'm still digesting the whole talk on it, but
mhm,
I'm sort of seeing how this, getting organized up here is actually helping me get organized out here.
mhm.
And for the people who are just listening, I was pointing to my brain up here, and then out here, in the real world. So
Oh,
anyway, it was. I've just been thinking a lot about it. So that's my
mhm.
that's my personal transformation and organizing that's going on.
And I understand, David, because I had a speaking engagement on Sunday, and then they were telling me about something they wanted me to be involved in about 3 weeks out, and I said, "I have the date in my calendar, but right now I need to focus here. I'm
Hmm.
not gonna think about that. I'm gonna focus here." And I understand sometimes we try to just, like, focus on everything. But right now, I just wanna be present for this.
Yep.
And then once this is over, then I'll possibly think about that. So I
Yeah.
do understand. Well, David, this has been I'm sorry, did you wanna
Oh,
say
sorry.
something?
I was going to say one more thing. Just a thought that got me thinking about that. Another way that I've tried to stay organized is with mission statements.
Mm,
And so I created a mission statement before I bought this company, that was my guide for making the right decision for me, my career, myself. And I'll bring it up here. I printed it out on some pieces of wood, and it sits above my
oh,
desk.
wow. Oh, that's
And what it
good.
says
I like
is,
that.
my current mission is to build something cool and successful at work, while giving me the freedom to be engaged with the people I love.
I
And
like
so I
that.
use that as a filter
I
with
like that.
each business decision I make,
Mhm,
because that's my career one. And it really helps you stay organized and keep the
mhm,
stuff out that you don't need, and
mhm.
do the things that are going to get you to your real goal, right?
Yep, yep.
So anyway, I just wanted to mention that if you're
I
hearing you say like, I'm not going to do that right now, I'm going to be here and present in the space.
Yeah, and I understand. I truly understand. Well, David, it has been a pleasure to talk to you. So, how can listeners and those watching get your smart labels? And of course, I will have your link in the show page, but of course, you can also share other ways that they can connect with you as well.
Sure. Well, you're able to get them on Amazon.com. You can just do a search for Smart Labels, which is one word. That's easy. They're on Walmart.com, if you prefer to shop there. Or you can come to our website, qrsmartlabels.com, and buy them there. Wherever you choose, we don't care. It's all great. So whatever makes it easy for you.
And of course, those watching and listening, I will have a direct link so you can purchase your smart labels. And of course, I'll also have all of Smart Labels social media so you can connect with them that way as well. David, thank you so much. It has been a pleasure. I enjoyed this conversation. And of course, I can't wait to really kind of dig into my own smart labels over here as well.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jen. It was a pleasure being on here, and I really thank you so much for having me on.